receive the brethren, and forbiddeth them that would, and casteth them out of the church. That's a strong verse. There again, there's no way that we can know for sure just what has taken place here regarding the letter that John has written, as well as regarding just what the situation was with this man Diotrephes. So it would be speculation on my part or on anyone's part as to just what Diotrephes was doing or why he withstood the letter from John that he had written to the church. But obviously, from this verse, Diotrephes had become very vocal in his opposition to John and to his writings to the church. Mr. Wiersbe, Kenneth Wiersbe writes, the phrase prating against us with malicious words means bringing false and empty charges against us. Now, what Diotrephes was saying about John obviously was sheer nonsense. But there are people who love to hear this kind of talk and who believe it. And apparently, Diotrephes had made these accusations against John at one of the church meetings or gatherings when John was not present to defend himself. And I don't know if John was ever able to visit this place. He said, if I come. John had said that, or if I come. So we don't know whether he ever did visit that church to meet face to face with this obstructor and conflict maker. John's, excuse me, John's sharp words in this verse seem to be out of character, at least when we think about, he's called the beloved disciple. He is the one that wrote more about love than any other apostles. But even love has got to be defended when it's attacked by malicious lies. And that's what John's doing. Now, the expositor's commentary, again, let me share something else from them. Such contradiction to the gospel by word and deed as done by Diotrephes could not be condoned. And indeed, it was not. It was no longer Diotrephes who was on trial for his action, but the elder and all those who believed like him. Silence on their part in the face of such total rejection of the truth and the life of the gospel would have been hypocritical as Diotrephes' earlier action. It was no pleasant experience that awaited the elder, but truth without love is no truth at all. Diotrephes was condemned not because he violated sound teaching regarding the person and nature of Jesus Christ, but because his life was a contradiction to the truth of the gospel. This action, this condition, required action by John and by the congregation. The end of quote. Now, to me, it appears from this verse that Diotrephes refused to allow certain visiting brethren to minister in the church, and possibly some of the brethren referred to by John in verses 5 and 6. He had set himself up as a screening committee, we could call it, I guess, and he wouldn't allow anybody to minister in the church that didn't fit his category of qualifications. The expression casteth them out. Now that seems to indicate that this man's rejection of those whom John had possibly sent are at least recommended to the church, and he cast them out. In other words, he refused them entrance or refused them opportunity to speak. Dr. Alford says the present tense indicates his habit. He was evidently one in high power and able to forbid and to punish the reception of the traveling brethren. In verse 11, John goes on to say, Beloved, follow not that which is evil, but that which is good. He that doeth good is of God, but he that doeth evil hath not seen God. Strong statement. And again, the term beloved. If Gaius and Diotrephes were members of the same church, and we get the impression they were maybe, but anyway, it would appear that by John addressing his letter to Gaius, it's because his previous letter had possibly been sent to the church and intercepted by this rascal Diotrephes, again, who refused to allow it to be read to the church. Again, that's supposition on our part, but it seems to make sense. John, he commended Gaius for the actions that he had taken toward those who had traveled among them. And then he rebukes Diotrephes for the actions that he had taken in rejecting the brethren. So in this verse, John directs our attention to yet another member of the church and commends him for what he's done. First, John admonishes the reader of his letter to follow not the example of someone like Diotrephes, but follow that which is good. So he says, follow not that which is evil, but follow that which is good. So John's last statement in this verse, it seems to be a strong and stinging rebuke toward Diotrephes. He that doeth evil hath not seen God. That's powerful. So obviously he would fit into this category of those that refuse to be doing good to others when he has the opportunity and the privilege of doing so. And those actions, John argues, are not of God. And then in verse 12, one more reference to Diotrephes, this is another character, Demetrius here. Get him confused with Diotrephes. This one, he says, Demetrius, this is a different person altogether. Demetrius have good report of all men and of the truth itself, yea, and we also bear record, and you know that our record is truth. Now, so here we have three characters, three people involved in this letter, this little letter, 3rd John. We have Gaius, we have Diotrephes, and now we have Demetrius. So 3 men. And just who this man was, again, we're not given any explanation, further information than what's contained right here in this one verse. Now, it's opinion, but it's, I guess, reason for opinion, that's by some, that he possibly was the bearer of this letter from John, whom John is commending in the work of the Lord. Again, supposition, we don't know. The expositors point out that Demetrius is commended in a threefold manner here by John. Number one, he had a good report of all men. Number two, and of the truth itself. And number three, of John himself. So that's pretty strong. And obviously, Demetrius is a man that is highly regarded by the apostle as a man that should be accepted. So what a letter that John writes to, again, whether it's to a church, we assume that it is, but it's written to a person, Gaius, but it's evidently involving a church group. And then John goes on, I had many things to write, but I will not with ink and pen write unto thee. And that's verse 13. Now, Wiersbe, he points out something I feel of interest in comparing these two last epistles. He writes, it is interesting to contrast these two little letters and see the balance of truth that John presented. Second, John was written to a godly woman about her family, while third John was written to a godly man about his church. John warned the elect lady about false teachers from the outside, but he warned Gaius about dictatorial leaders inside the fellowship. The false teachers in 2 John would appeal to love so that they might deny truth, while Diotrephes would appeal to truth as in a most unloving way. He would attack the brethren. The end of quote. And then John, he closes this little letter by saying, "But I trust I shall shortly see thee, and we shall speak face to face. Peace be to thee. Our friends salute thee. Greet the friends by name." So John finishes this epistle, very short, 14 verse, dealing again with three men, Gaius, Diotrephes, and Demetrius, three men. And it's a loving remarks that's coming from the heart of a shepherd, John, who obviously loved the sheep that he felt responsibility for. And John, he truly must have been a man who strongly manifested the love of God to those whom he ministered among. And from reading this short letter, it becomes obvious that what was needed then and what is needed now, today, in this 21st century, is more men to fit the role of a Gaius or a Demetrius, and fewer men, or even none at all, who would fit the role of Diotrephes. Let's have more Gaiuses, more Demetriuses among us, and less, or hopefully none, Diotrepheses. That's going to cause problems instead of help to the church. God bless you. We close with prayer. God, we thank you again. What a privilege, what an honor to share your word. We thank you for your blessings. Thank you for fellowship with our friend, Brother Michael, and his family and the church. We appreciate what's going on in Kenya. We ask your blessings upon them. Bless the church in Diwa. Let there be continued revival and a great weekend of services. In your name, Jesus. Amen. God bless you, Brother Michael.
Amen. Thank you very much, Bishop.
Amen. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.